So let's get to, I think that's probably the best display. So the idea is that we can start to combine input methods and keyboard selection, and then provide a way to go and set those up in the more complex but thorough dialogues. I guess, what's people's initial reaction to that part of it? Arnie?
Silence.
Wait, let me set up my computer first, please.
Okay.
So, spec is...
You misspelled Tony SP.
Yeah.
T-O-N-I-E-P.
Can we try to organize the session in two parts? I'm proposing that in the copy document. That is the review of the menu, where we need the input of the domain experts. And also I understand that at the platform level, you were saying, Arnie, between IBIS and XKB, there may be issues. That is, take also some time to see on which modules we can build the keyboard menu integration, or if there are changes, upcoming changes at the platform level that we kind of are aware of what they're going to be.
So Arnie has already pointed out one mistake in my design, which is that
Do you want the red pen?
I wouldn't work so well on the screen. It's a glossy screen. That in the way the XKB is structured at the moment, input methods are built on top of particular keyboard layouts. They assume particular keyboard layouts, usually USM.
Oops.
And so rather than having two orthogonal sets of selections there, two sections in the menu, it would probably be better to present those as mutually exclusive choices. So it'd just be a single choice of whether you're using a keyboard layout or an input method, because the input method will be changing the keyboard layout itself underneath, behind the scenes. So one fewer separator and one fewer dot, which makes the thing simpler. It makes the design simpler. Implementation slightly more complicated.
Design. So the plan is to change the design to have select input method first or keyboard first?
To make input method and keyboard selection mutually exclusive. So you're either using an input method or you're choosing a keyboard layout.
How would that
So would
be
it be different
reflected
menus?
visually? How would that look? How would it be reflected visually?
Well, that first separator would not be there, and one of those two dots would not be there.
Oh, so you'd select one first and then...
It's one list, including both XKB and IBIS.
Oh, okay. So we should combine them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Combine them. How we sort them is a different issue. I would sort them by language, because usually you have only one keyboard layout per language available. That's what most users have. For Chinese users, maybe two keyboards, but at most three. At most.
Okay.
Right. So you would actually group them by language, and then by variation of the keyboard.
Could I ask a straightforward start-off question here? How is this list populated? Is it based on user preferences or something that already pre-exists?
So further down the page is screenshots of the existing keyboard preferences window, to which we'd make minor changes to say, do you want the menu in the panel or not? And the IBIS preferences window, to which we would also add a checkbox, or to which there's an already existing checkbox actually.
So let's say a user has created 5 keyboard layouts they've selected. They have they'd have them 5 of
Those
them would
5
be on the
would be on
list. And whatever numbers of input methods they have enabled, those would also be on the
That's
list.
this list here, yeah.
So, another question. Right now, you switch between keyboard layouts using keystrokes, like, what is it, Shift-Tab for Russian and things like that.
This we need to change.
We're talking about getting rid of that and using just this?
Well, not really getting rid of that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The problem is that if we enable IBIS or any other input method framework for that matter, those input method frameworks have been initially designed for CJK users, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. And on those keyboards we have basically two modes. One is English and one is IME mode. The IME mode contains the keyboard layouts where they can cycle through with a key combination, with a hotkey combination. And to enable that mode, they have a different hotkey sequence. Either they have a separated key on the keyboard, like Japanese and Korean users have, or like Chinese users, which don't have a separate key, they have a key combination which is control space. Now, unfortunately, control space is also used by other applications, and some users mistakenly hit control space if they just want to enter space or shift space or whatever. I don't know what they want, but there was the way back, I think it was in Party or Intrepid cycle, where I made a mistake in the packaging, and suddenly Skim was enabled for every user. Means control space was active for every user. And I got lots of complaints from users saying, why I'm typing suddenly in this weird language. I just accidentally hit the control space to enable it, right? So the control space switches between those modes. If we want to support this one, I'd really like to support IBUS by default for everyone, but without the hotkey sequence. So this control space and every other hotkey sequence has to go away and has to be a user preference.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I was going to ask about shortcuts and things like that may be impacted or not required for the menu. So
Yeah.
you're saying typically...
I think there is an item in the IBUS preferences.
So yeah,
where you can set which hotkey you want to use.
No, it's outside, because it's outside the scope of the menu.
But it's a change, that is, there is the situation in Lucid, and what we're aiming for is something that would change it, that is add shortcuts or add a preference or...
Preference already
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah.
Is what it's saying.
No,
We're just
saying-
going to change the setting in IBUS to make sure that the default is not set.
Is it a
In
new
the
preference
IBUS
or change in the preference?
Change the preference.
Okay.
In the IBUS preference window, in the general tab, there is the first item is keyboard shortcuts, enable or disable, and currently the default is control space. What is it? Zenkaku, Hankaku, this is for Japanese. Alt Zenkaku, Hankaku is also for Japanese. Alt Graph is also for Japanese. This is if you don't have the special key. Hanvol key, which is for Korean users, and Alt release, well, Alt plus release plus Alt write, which is maybe also for Korean users. So these are the default shortcuts, which are enabled by default if you have IBUS enabled.
So these are what will turn on those specific input methods?
Those will switch between the current keyboard layout you have and IBUS.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you have to know what is the right one for your language.
You can hit any of those. They're all enabled by default. So any of those, control space is the most common one. Hit those, you will be in IBUS mode. Hit it again, you will be back in XKB mode.
On the Mac, I know it's command space to switch between.
Yeah, it differs on the platform.
Space, so
It differs
yeah.
on the platform.
Maybe that.
Okay.
Windows uses control space, that's why you also have it, control space.
Just a very quick usability question here. Do we really need a keyboard shortcut to switch between keyboard and IBUS?
CJK users are used to that.
Yeah.
For all other users, I think we don't need it.
Uh-huh.
That's why I think it should be a user preference to turn this on or off.
And how do you make that preference change depending on the language that the user has selected or has used for installing?
This setting should be stored in, what is it? The GNOME registry. I always forget the name.
If you capture that,
gconf?
the IBUS.
What's the GNOME registry name? gconf?
Yeah, gconf.
gconf, yeah. It should be stored there. All the IBUS settings are stored there. IBUS itself uses dbus to communicate.
That's not an issue for this spec.
So
No,
we could make a switch to enable or disable this.
but it's a note for the platform guys that depending on language they should.
You're going
Are
to
you
use
covering?
If you want to
governance.
If you want to do
Yeah.
this, if you want to do this with a menu, with a combined menu, which is highly desirable, but you need to take care of the underlying issues, right?
So, but I mean, what's the issue for the menu?
Traditionally, those two input method systems are totally independent, right? You're trying to merge two independent methods which are mutually exclusive, but don't act this way because of implementation issues.
Which two methods?
XKB and IBUS.
Right, okay.
But I don't see how they're mutually exclusive, I guess I don't understand that.
They are
The input
mutually,
method. it
they are
determines
mutually
this.
exclusive, but they don't work this way, unfortunately. They should be, but they aren't.
Okay, so in theory, they should be exclusive,
Yes.
but the reality is that some input methods depend on some keyboards because just the way they're implementation.
IBUS and any other input method framework has been developed for US English keyboard layouts only.
Okay.
Standard US English, because that's what East Asian keyboards use. The default language is US English,
Okay.
right? 104 keys, plus the additional keys for Japanese and Korean users, and US English layout.
Okay.
So now, if you come and have a different XKB layout, let's say French and Celtic keyboard, right? So they mess up some keys, right?
Yeah.
So once you have that, enable IBUS, it expects the US English keyboard layout. What happens? You won't get the keys you are aiming at, right? You have to think back to the US English keyboard layout. Where are the keys? Where do I have to type, right? The IBUS author has tried to work around this by including a mapping, which maps those keyboards back to US English, right? So
Isn't that what XKB does though?
XKB, this is a problem. The XKB has 3 layers. The lowest layer is a hardware layer, which is the key codes, what the hardware keyboard produces.
Yeah.
Then it has an intermediate layer, which gives each key an identifier, right? A unique identifier. And then we have the top layer, which maps those identifiers to the actual letters.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the intermediate layer is never exposed. IBUS would need to have access to that one to solve this issue. Unfortunately, we cannot have access to this one because it's not exposed. So we only have access to the top layer with the letters, and therefore need to take what XKB gives us. Now we only see the letters. We only see letter A, but we don't know which key the user typed. However, some of the layouts, of the input method layouts, are fixed on the keyboard. So the user expects that letter to be in that specific space, right? So what happens inside IBUS and any other framework is you map the ASCII letters which you get to the Asian character or Asian sequence of character or whatever, right? So if you hit the letter A on a US English keyboard, you get the character which is here. For example, on a Chinese keyboard, this would be the M, which is the M character, right? Now on an unsettled keyboard, the A is here on the Q key, right? So if you hit this key, you get the letter M, which would be expected to be here on this key, right? So the whole layout messes up. And this is something we need to avoid. So in those cases, for those layouts, we need to force the keyboard layout to switch back to US English.
Okay.
Right.
To get the proper. Well,
To get the proper mapping, exactly.
But it sounds like IBUS is relying on a lot of assumptions that are
False.
That's why IBUS has a menu. I think it's an advanced tab. Use system keyboard layout. So use system keyboard layout tries to detect which XKB layout you have as default, and then tries to remap the keys to US English. However, only a handful of keyboard mappings are included here. It's not that all mappings are included, only a handful.
That was one of the questions in this bit.
So I
what is
guess-
that option for?
Yeah. So this is what the option is for, and it may create confusion. It may deliver what the user expects, because you have basically 2 kinds of keyboard mappings in input methods. One is the keys are in a fixed space. For those, we need the mapping back to US English, right? For others, like Hanyu Pinyin, Chinese Hanyu Pinyin, which uses Latin characters. For those, the default layout is also US English. So if you are a blind typer, you will want to have your keyboard in US English. However, if you are not, and you look what you are typing, right, and you are maybe a French user and you are used to your Asiatic keyboard layout. So if you want to type in A, you hit the A and not the character below, right? So for those is this one which uses the system keyboard, right? So you have the A where it is actually on your Asiatic keyboard layout.
But is it also this key is here because you don't have enough translation maps in the IBUS system that do translate between or that resolve the uncertainty between the low-level XKB maps and the high-level XKB maps. What I understand is that because you don't have access to a middle layer, you're forced to either make assumptions or have actually translation maps that IBUS knows about. Right? And the more translation maps you have in IBUS, the less you have the need to do these assumptions and have the need for this key.
Yes.
So do we have a way of knowing which maps IBUS has? That is, where IBUS knows is right? That's
No
right.
source code.
Okay.
Next question.
I mean, it's in the source code, but could it be exposed?
You can list them, of course.
Yeah. So then in those cases, we want to use the system layout, right? By default.
It depends.
Is
If you want
the
to-
option off by default or on by default?
Good question, I don't know.
I haven't changed that, I'm sure, so I'm guessing it's on by default.
Probably.
Right.
So I need to head to the other session now, but I filled in the answer to that question on the bottom of the spec. There's another question about the custom font thing, which would be helpful. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
no problem.
So what's the other question on the font? Sorry.
At the bottom of the wiki page, what and IBUS has a use custom font option. Do you know what that's for?
Custom font?
Yeah.
Ah, that one.
No.
Yes, I know what this is for.
That one.
This is in case you, well, custom font is probably bad wording. It's custom font setting. So by default, it's Sans, which is a meta font, and size 10, right? 10 point. So for Chinese, for example, because the characters are very complex, you will want to have a bigger font size.
Ah, I see.
For example, I have it at size 16 by default. And you may want to limit it to a specific font, which maybe has all characters, right? So by default, the Sans, because it's a meta font config, will mess around with it. So you may have characters from different fonts mixed together, which looks terrible.
So when it says use custom font, where is it using that custom font?
Right, good question.
Everywhere. It's as soon as you hit Control Space. Let me see. Where is?
Are you saying that it overrides the font setting of your application context?
If you hit Control Space, if you can see it here at the bottom, you have the IBUS panel,
Yep.
which shows up. The font is used in here, right?
Just yeah.
So this one, actually not here. This is 10 point. But once I type something, right, you get an additional
You could also
pop-up.
there's a video system.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work with my
Okay,
laptop.
so the custom font.
So you get a pop-up. So this one,
With an IBUS.
so this one within IBUS has the, another font size,
Okay,
right?
so that doesn't.
everyone,
So it's not.
See
It's
that,
not
guys?
applicable to me.
right?
Okay.
You have additional one.
Screenshot of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this one is a custom font setting, right?
Okay.
So this is basically where you select the character you want to have.
So it's a limited. It has a limited impact on the whole user interface, just for the input.
For the character selection.
Yeah.
For the character selection. Only for that. Which is highly useful, by the way.
Yeah.
I just have a quick follow-up on what I asked earlier. The key sequence to turn it on and off, you said GTK users are used to having control space to turn input methods on and off. My question is, in the real world use case...
No, Windows users are used to have that.
Okay, Windows users too. My question is, in the real use case, when you have an Asian person or any person who needs to use an input method normally in the course of their work,
Yeah.
how much shifting back and forth between input methods and non-input methods do they do? I would guess, I could be wrong. Okay, I would guess if you just stay in one. Lots? Why, does it type like URLs, for example, and Latin
Exactly.
characters?
Every time you have to type
Okay.
Latin characters, you need to switch back.
Okay, that answers it. Of course, they have DNS names with Unicode soon, right?
Yeah,
There you
one
go.
day.
Hopefully not.
They do, right, they okay the spec.
I know it's Unicode and it's terrible. I
Okay.
don't know who invented that and
It's not
why.
even possible for like people with Latin. They're used to go to those tools.
Okay,
So,
so,
here on the interface.
so what's the best way to interface with iBus? Is it dbus? Is it on dbus or is it?
dbus. iBus uses dbus.
Okay, and when you do the same with
SKP doesn't, as far as I know.
well, I think
It's not running by
G
default.
settings goes in. GTK settings, I believe, shows it. Oh, dbus isn't running, iBus isn't running, so I
Yeah.
just started it, after you just log out. But,
Yeah.
I believe we could change the keyboard in settings, do it.
No, there's nothing exposed to the keyboard.
No?
No, nothing exposed to the keyboard.
Okay, we'll have to fix that then.
Okay.
Because it normally does the dialogue to switch keyboards,
Yeah.
so. It knows
So
they're all-
okay, because I was actually wondering how you were going to implement it. So
Yeah.
you actually still want settings daemon to do the key. Yeah, that makes sense actually because
So you just expose it.
Yeah. when it has quite a lot of control over that already. Like when the window changes focus and things, it
Yeah.
updates the current layout. So.
So,
I had something else I wanted to discuss actually. It's keyboard related, but not layout specific. I have an issue at the moment. I've got several wireless keyboards at home, and none of them have indicator LEDs on for caps lock, things like that. And I'm not the only person who's noticed this problem because now GNOME settings daemon upstream indicates the modifier state as GTK status icons in the panel, which we're obviously going to have an issue with. I'm just wondering how we can design something that provides that functionality. At the moment, on every wireless keyboard I've seen, there's no way of telling whether you've got any of the locks on at all because they don't have LEDs on.
when,
The same battery power.
okay.
So they tend to provide Windows drivers that provide this functionality. You see.
There's a really neat,
So I don't know.
there's an open source project that will do that.
Okay.
And do it on the, like it's a floating window.
Okay.
And so you'd like to have in the panel the indication of which locks are set.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have that. At the moment, I have to just sort of, I have to type in a window and then, change if it's the wrong setting.
I'm sorry, in which panel would these state modifiers be displayed?
They're doing a general panel, you said?
They will be when we, if we go to the new version of GNOME settings daemon, they will appear in the panel as status icons.
Oh, it's a-
We don't really want that. That's quite undesirable.
it's
So,
extra.
So do you know where that setting gets put? Because not everybody's going to get it by default, of course.
I've not tried it yet. I think everyone will get it by default. I'm not sure whether it's configurable at the moment. I'll check out, but I've not done the latest version. I know all I know is it's been committed.
That's crazy by default. I mean, 'cause most people don't want that.
Okay, yeah. But anyone with a wireless keyboard wants that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not all wireless keyboards.
Yeah, I mean, or certainly all of the newer wireless keyboards I've seen don't have LEDs on.
I've got a Bluetooth one that does, but
Yeah.
I just want to power it down.
Mine's not Bluetooth, no. But it's nice. It's nice having batteries that last, like 8 months. But it'd be nice to have the LEDs on it as well.
For as much as people use caps lock, I think you can probably put the LED on there and still have it when you use 8 months. And
Yeah.
it's a very common key.
No, it's the number lock key that's on the online.
Frankly, I switched mine to Escape.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know whether that's outside the scope of the session, but we could do the thinking.
Yeah, we
around
need
it.
to support that. We could probably do it with text. Which makes more sense.
Okay. So you want to
Regarding
do
the other,
interface?
I think the other issue here is the icons. So we wanted to have an icon representing which language you've selected and input. Where is that? in the spec, which is going to be crazy to get these icons built. So, do you have any good ideas on how
They are
to
provided already, at least by IBAS.
What?
By IBAS they are provided already.
It didn't seem to have all of them.
Right, only some.
Yeah. Is there?
So those which have native IBAS modules, those should have icons.
Mhm. But I mean, like, this is a
Yeah,
crown,
Yeah.
which doesn't really explain to me
it's the official icon of Anthe.
the Anthe, but I don't. Do I want to know the icon of the Anthe, or do I want to know that it's Japanese?
You want the Anthe icon. Because Japanese has multiple input methods.
Okay. But as a user, do I know Anthe? I mean, is that?
A Japanese user would know what Anthe is. It would expect Anthe on his system, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
People using
so when I
Windows
use
or
OS
other
X, the
operating
Anthe
systems?
icon comes up.
Sorry again.
But let's say I use OS X and I switch to Japanese. The Anthe icon, this crown comes up on the OS X panel.
On the IBAS panel it comes up.
But what comes
Yeah.
up on the, like if I'm using OS X and I switch to Japanese input, what does it put on the panel?
They don't have Anthe. Anthe is Linux specific.
So it's a
I believe
program
it puts
logo,
up-
not a explanation.
Yeah.
I believe it puts up a flag with JP or something along those lines.
And so I think we'd rather put up something that was not program-based, but yet
You
language-based.
need to have two indicators. One is for language, one is for input method.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we looked at doing
But
a
you could-
combined. So here's, let's see where, I can't find it here now, of course, that I want to split. A combined icon to do that.
So you would need to create a lot of icons by
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
And,
Figure out
and every time the packages change, add more input methods also, you need to create new ones.
So how should we handle that?
You want to patch the packages?
We
Like
don't
Ubuntu
need
did?
to, don't they use icon theming or no?
No?
Icon naming spec?
I don't know how this works.
Okay. So do you think there's if we went out to the community and said, hey, could you give us the letter A or the first letter that's representative of your language, people could tell us what that is?
No. For many languages you won't have this case.
So, but for Japanese, or do Chinese have a character?
For
that they-
Japanese we would use the sum character for Urban Japanese, Japan.
Mhm.
For Korean, we would use either a Hangul character, the character which is used for Hangul, the Han character.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably that one. And for Chinese, we would use the Zhong, the Chinese Zhong, because Zhongguo is China in Chinese. So we would use the Zhong character for Chinese.
Okay.
This is how it's used in, at least on my iPhone.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And so, is there a list of those characters that we can build from, or is it something we have to build ourselves?
I think we have to build by ourselves.
Okay. So how can we crowdsource that? I mean, so effectively we're going to need lots of languages we don't speak.
We can only do this for scripts other than Latin or Cyrillic. Languages, we have a lot of languages which use Latin or Cyrillic.
Mhm.
They use the same set of characters with minor differences.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you want to display difference between, let's say,
and German.
English and French?
Well, that's what the...
The accent aigu is also used in other languages, right? So how do you want to make this distinguishable? So you need
So
to
there's
have the
two
language
letters.
code in that case,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So either the language code,
Uh-huh.
but then why not use a language code for all languages?
Because they don't necessarily want Arabic characters. I mean, if I put CN, does that going to mean anything to someone who speaks Chinese?
Chinese would be ZH,
Oh, CH, sorry. Or JA is going to be...
Japanese.
Yeah, but it's someone who speaks Japanese and maybe doesn't know much about Arabic characters.
Everyone knows, because those are also the top level domains.
So wouldn't we use JP then?
Huh?
JP is the top level domain for Japan, right?
Right, I mean language codes, which
Yeah.
are commonly used all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So JA stands for Japanese, everyone knows that,
Okay.
right?
So you could,
ZH,
we should use language codes, right?
we can either use language codes, yes, and if you want to mix it, we can use some special characters for some languages, but not for all. We could use this for many Asian languages because they have separate scripts, like Thai, Lao, Khmer,
But no, we can
Vietnamese, we can use it.
It'll be an SVG icon, so we don't necessarily have to support it in the font. We can make it an icon.
Of course you can make an icon.
But why can't we support an icon for Thai? I mean, it's just
You
vector.
can. You can make a Thai letter as an icon,
Yeah, yeah.
of course. For those it will be clear.
Oh, okay.
Just for those languages which share the same script, right?
I mean, okay. So for languages that have their own script, it's easy, we can use that
Yes.
script and people will notice the script.
Yes.
But for languages that don't have their own script, we need a language code because there's no
Exactly.
differentiation based on the script.
Exactly.
Okay.
Within the menu, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, but also
there's
on the
difference
panel, because we want the panel to be just, we want the panel icon to show when, when someone switches input modes, we want the panel icon to change so they know
Yeah.
what input mode they're in.
But here we were saying that just one character, I mean, we rendered as an icon is sufficient, and there is
I think we need two, right?
two.
Because
The
the-
second
you need
one,
two.
there's just one.
You need
Yeah.
two. You need two icons, one for the language and one for the input method.
Oh, systematically.
Huh?
Right. But
Yeah.
DV is what?
Like you see, you have,
Beforehand.
here in the list you have already 3 Chinese input methods. There are a lot more, right?
Yes.
You see in the list, you have
So
already
it's
3
true.
Chinese input methods. There are a lot more possible, a lot more available. So you would need a different icon for each. And they are already delivered.
And so we always have to do a combined icon for both keyboard and,
Language, yes.
is there any way we can go to one, or is there? I mean, because it would be nice, because basically our panel is all singular icons, right?
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we could go to one icon. Is there?
Could the panel icon simply indicate whether input method is turned on currently or not, rather than trying to say what language and input method? And then you you show the menu and
Yeah.
it'll show.
Is it a
stuff?
typical use case that most people have more than one input method? Or is it a typical use case that I have Arabic and not Arabic?
It's a typical use case that you have more than one input method.
Okay.
For Asian languages, or as I've seen for non-Asian languages, where input method is less of an issue, it's more switching between languages.
Yeah.
Where you expect input methods, that never makes sense, to switch automatically. Which is the case with the system, I mean, between XKB and IBUS, it's the same. It is the case, sorry, or should the menu actually compensate for that? That is, you're in English, you have no particular input method except the default US English mechanism. You're switching to Japanese, expecting a distinct input method plus.
Usually it's empty, but it could also be another message. So, okay, because if you switch on IBUS, you will have a little panel here, right, which is necessary.
Yeah.
So this little panel has the name of the input method and an icon next to it. So even if you have in the menu only the language code, you still have the icon here and the name of the input method.
Sorry.
So we can
Yeah.
limit the icon in the panel to be the language code
Yeah.
as long as this panel shows up.
Okay.
If this panel shows up, it will tell you which input method you have enabled.
You're saying that if the input method is turned on, you're always going to see the visual indication on the
Yes.
screen what your current input method is.
Yes.
Therefore, we don't need to redundantly show it either on the panel
Yes.
or in the menu.
Yes,
All we really need is the language code.
yeah, basically.
But is that consistent with the specification, or is the specification saying we should always have both the...
Well, I was trying to figure out, I mean, the specification was
Yeah, okay,
dancing around,
so-
to be entirely honest. So we really need to know what language you're in, not necessarily what input method, because input method will be displayed by another window.
Yeah.
So,
Except for SKB layouts where you have multiple SKB layouts per language. If you see the different keyboard layouts for English already, long list in XKB, right? So you want to know which one you have enabled.
But it's XKB specific in this case, whereas if the user is using IBUS, in this
It's different,
case,
yeah.
he doesn't need the extra indication.
Yes. Like how do you want to integrate, how do you want to indicate drag left keyboard for US English?
Yeah.
Work left.
Left being
There's a left
there.
Yeah.
Or left-handed?
Oh my God.
Opposed to drag right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the work's based on having the consonants and the vowels. People are left-handed.
How do you indicate US International with that keys opposed to US International without that keys? You know, how do you want to do that?
Okay.
The icon.
But so is that a way to optimize or to improve the specification shape that depending on no, so you're just saying no. That is for X key you no. Are you saying that with IBUS we never need the input method indication on top of the icon?
Yes, because
This
it's
is what
shown in the
and
little
there are
panel
no
here.
exceptions because we're like searching for exception which
Yeah.
would break the rule we just set.
No. If we turn IBUS on, we need to have this panel because this panel has a lot of options
Yeah.
which are necessary for a given language and input method,
Yeah.
right? So these options need to be available to the users, and they may differ depending on which language and input method, right? So this panel needs to be available, and this panel usually says, or actually always says, which input method is enabled,
Okay.
right? So it has icon and name, but you can switch it to icon only, depending on your
And
preferences.
this panel is what is the module that is managing this panel? Is that a
IBUS.
IBUS, right? So
Mm.
this is an application that is running all the time. That is
It started by your X session.
Yeah, right. So and it's totally unrelated to the keyboard menu we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
And there shouldn't be any links into.
No, because you need to be able to. I think you need to be able to force the change if you're not doing the hotkey. So we don't have to. We shouldn't assume that people know the hotkey, especially if they haven't set a hotkey. Like I could see for if I was in America and I'm taking a Japanese class, for instance, I probably don't want the hotkey to switch. I mean, for as much as I'm going to use it, I want to go.
If you know the hotkey, then you will want to use it. Yes.
Yeah, but I don't know the hotkey because I'm.
If you don't know the hotkey, then you will need to set it.
Yeah.
Right.
So we need to provide a way to, one, discover the hotkey, and two, select without using the hotkey.
Yeah.
Field test. So yes, it needs to be supported by the menu, but not necessarily. That will be the most common use of it. Most people, as they get more proficient, will switch to using the hotkey. But
So
doesn't
therefore,
mean.
does the menu need to have, not the top of the menu, but down in it, does it need to have any kind of an icon by the input method?
Yeah, I should have a checkbox.
Right, so there,
Or
it
you-
shows icons now in the menu, doesn't it?
Correct.
Right, are they necessary?
Well, I think
No.
we've got them already.
Oh, we've got them already?
It should show you. I mean, we're going to have to build
We
on
got them where they are available.
Yeah, we should show them, or whatever we're going to show on the panel, when that's selected, we should show the menu. So that you learn those icons, you learn when they change, what they mean. And so it becomes a reference for you.
Except that, like, here is shown for the XKB layouts, they have basically the language code in an icon.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if we have multiple different layouts for one language or country, the icon does not necessarily be different. Right? So in some cases, the same icon is used. For example, US and US International. Or US
So maybe
International
we need
with
to,
that piece.
if we're going to use two icons, one for layout and one for language, we need to have that as a paired set.
You would need to provide different icons. So the question would be, and this would be pretty tough to come up with one icon which represents a certain layout.
Is there standard icons for that?
No.
I mean, that people know?
Like, as I said, how do you represent US International in contrast to US International with their keys?
I've never seen a UDS International keyboard, so I can't say I'm a user of one.
It's the same
Keyboard
keyboard.
references, it's always just indicated with a verbal description.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that means, then you're kind of in trouble.
Yeah. So, okay. I mean, I guess we'll have to do that for the designers.
US International is basically the same like US English keyboard, but you can use the right alt key to access the third level.
Okay, the
So
grammar.
additional
It's basically
characters
all
with
grammar.
accents and stuff like
Yeah.
this. And with dead keys, it's the same thing, but certain keys, for example, the apostrophe key and the quotes and the colon and semicolon, those ones are dead keys.
Okay.
Means pressing those followed by another key will produce a key with a diacritic.
Such a bad name, dead key. It makes it sound like it does nothing. It took
That's
me a
what I-
while to figure out what the heck it meant.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but that is common in Europe. They call it dead key. Yeah.
That's why.
It's a European thing.
Yeah, well, it's misleading.
We have dead languages with dead keys.
That's what But did anybody see that defamation plenary session?
Yeah.
I was just thinking that when you look through the keyboard preferences, very quick point, and you see that looking at all the different keyboard layouts. Gee, wouldn't it be nice if we used like a animation to visually display the differences? You go from, U.S. English, U.S. English, U.S. International, U.S. whatever, so you could quickly see the visual difference in the keyboard layouts, so you know what you're getting. Because right now you can see the layout, but who's going to notice the differences?
You can see it in the
That's right.
when you set the layout in the GNOME menu.
That's what I'm talking about. You can
Yes,
see
you
it,
can
but
see
who
it.
can really grok the whole thing? And then
Right.
you go through 5 different ones, and who knows what
Right.
the differences are? Some kind of visual
You need
diff.
to look very closely.
You're
to
on
find the
it. Action
difference.
item.
But do most people do that?
Well, I think the problem is that it's probably an American thing. Don't know the keyboard layouts that they want, and so they're trying to figure out: do I want U.S. International or do I want U.S. Normal?
It's not
Oh.
only a US thing. It's
Yes.
Yeah, but
worldwide.
that's what
It's
I'm
every-
saying.
in every country,
And so-
because the keyboard layouts we provide are not necessarily the same what users are used
Okay.
to on other platforms.
Well, why is that? Do we need to fix that?
Other platforms provide different layouts.
So,
So they provide some default layouts. Some of them may be national standard, some of them may not, right?
Okay.
Many countries don't have a national standard.
Right, they don't.
So then we usually have the same ones on Linux if XKB can support them.
Mhm.
We have one case, for example, for Lao, where they come up with a national standard now, but XKB cannot support it. At least not fully, only partly, because XKB is too limited, right?
XKB is pretty flexible. I don't know what they did.
XKB sucks. XKB can only do one-to-one mapping. One key, one character. And character, I mean code point. Unicode code point. So, if you have a sequence where you have a combining character in Unicode, which is 2 code points, base character plus modifier, right? The rendering engine will move them together, you get a combined character. This is the way Unicode works. XKB does not support this. It does only work with one code point. The second code point will cause an error. The keyboard layout doesn't work.
Oh, that seems easy enough to fix, right?
I don't know, you can try.
seems fundamental.
Yeah.
It is fundamental.
It's fundamental in the way it's probably written, so it's probably easy, but it's a lot of grunt work.
Yeah. That doesn't seem crazy to fix though.
But
That's why no one is touching it.
like when you buy a computer and you will buy a laptop in South Africa, when you buy a laptop in Singapore, and when you buy a laptop in Egypt, and one in the US, in a Windows world, in a Mac world, how do they know what keyboard
They don't. It's pre-installed.
Right.
It's OEM. They pre-install
Yeah,
it.
they
It's
do.
all
Or when
set.
they install, okay, let's say they install Windows from scratch.
Nobody
because,
installs Windows.
well, their system got hosed or something.
They take it to Best Buy and the tech club comes in. Little guys and
Probably true.
yeah.
Oh, cool, like geek friends.
By default, at least for the Chinese one, I think they have one keyboard layout which is the most common one in each country. For example, we have multiple Chinese keyboard layouts available, but the most common one in Taiwan, for example, is the Chinese phonetic layout with the bookmark for the characters. It's a phonetic alphabet. So this is the most common one used in Taiwan. In China, the most common one is pinyin, which is Latin characters.
US English, right? Layout?
Yeah, layout.
Yeah.
Right? So these are the most common layouts in those countries, and those are installed by default. But they have another settings menu, I don't know where in the system settings, where you can add more layouts or can change the default layout. And usually the users know where to find it.
Have we covered the IBUS XKB issues through that discussion, or are there more changes we need to be aware
Well,
of during Maverick?
You've seen the switch to use the system keyboard setting, right? In the iOS preferences window.
Yeah.
I personally, I think this is not the right way to do, because it switches the keyboard to the system keyboard layout for all input methods. But we will want to differ between those which use actually Latin characters, where you want them to be in that position where they're on the keyboard, except if you are a foreign user and you are blind typing, then you want to set it to the keyboard layout you're used to, right? Which is usually US English. But for those keyboard layouts where they have their own script and the letters are in a fixed position on the keyboard and are expected to be there, for those we want to enforce the mapping to be US English, right? Because that's what iOS expects.
So,
How does
for that, how do we know that?
We need to tag the input methods manually.
Okay. Is that
Currently it
something?
doesn't exist. We need to build up this database with the help of the users probably.
So is that something?
To set a
that
flag.
Should that be in the iBus package? You said you need the
I
iBus maintainer.
I think it should be in the modules package.
iBus modules?
iBus modules.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something you think upstream would be interested in, or?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So if we could query that over dbus, we'd be happy to comply. So is that something you think you could get in for Maverick?
I think that should be possible. I will contact upstream
Okay.
to get this in.
That sounds good. Did you put that down as an action?
No, because my session crashed.
Let's do that. I think that
Next
makes
session
sense.
actually.
Okay, sorry. Let me write it down then. I think you had it. You're there.
If you're still on the
Yep, I am.
on the right
I just-
job document.
Okay. Ask. Are tagging is tagging input methods that are heavily tied to layouts. Would that be a good way to describe it?
Yep.
Okay. So we need to reshuffle the menu because I've got to. Well, let's just. I mean, we've got, I guess, 7 minutes. So we can probably just go through the notes. So basically, we need to take the menu and we need to reshuffle it so that it's based on combined input method keyboard because they're basically tied together intrinsically. That changes the implications of how the icons should be done because they're effectively a group set. And that also, well, okay. And so then on the platform side, iBus will be installed everywhere, so we don't need to really worry about that case in theory. We should obviously handle it, but it will not have a hotkey, so we'll expect that that's how users will use us.
So we should put in a menu item to set hotkey also, which then pops up the iBus preferences where you can set the hotkey.
Yep. Okay. So we need a set IP key.
Probably the menu in iBus should change so that you can enable or disable the predefined hotkeys. I think currently we cannot do this. We have to remove or add hotkeys. So I will talk with upstream about this.
Okay, so Arnie asked upstream to see if there's a way to disable hotkeys without unsetting them.
Well, without removing them from the list.
Yep.
Yeah. We don't want to clear the list. Yeah.
Yep.
So we just want to see, okay, these ones are defined by default, but currently disabled.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want to enable them, you can enable them.
Sounds good. Okay. So the actions, I guess, are that MPT will update the design to make the language and keyboard joined. MPT is going to add an easy way to set the hotkey as it's not set by default. Arnie is going to ask upstream to see if there's a way to disable the hotkey without removing from the list, and ask the iBus upstream about tagging input methods that are heavily tied to specific layouts. and I get everything else.
Nice summary.
Yep.
Actually, you want the hotkeys you want to have to be set depending on the language the user installs on the system. If the user installs Japanese by default, he will want to have the Japanese hotkeys enabled by default.
But yeah, so you're going to do that in gconf with the IBUS stuff, or is it the language?
That should be language selector
Okay.
to set this.
That's part of your IBUS session though, so I shouldn't have it here.
That is an icon here. There's an item here.
It is, okay.
Yeah. It's related to keyboard layout.
Alright, set hotkeys. Default language is changed.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know if the IBUS upstream is also switching to G settings?
G settings or G settings?
That's the gconf replacement that'll be in Maverick. Yeah.
Huh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Why is it better?
Well, a lot of reasons. It doesn't use Corba as the big one. But it also does things like it actually makes a binary blob that could be in-mapped for default settings, so it really speeds up boot time. It does delayed writes, so that you don't actually block them writing to the database. It handles that through a daemon. It can also handle layers of things, so we can put like a couch DB tracking stuff.
I don't think that upstream will support G settings.
Okay, so that's fine. We're looking at Maverick as a transition release
Do
for this.
we have resources to help them to do that?
I mean, I won't support it because the resources are delayed, I won't support it.
Yeah. We're going to support both this release, and basically the way these settings work is it works on a per app basis, so you migrate each app individually. We need to figure out.
We might need to help
Okay.
IBUS upstream to switch to G settings because IBUS upstream is basically developed by Red Hat. It's developed by one Red Hat employee,
Okay.
and he does the major work, and he's also limited with his time, right, and resources. So if we could help them with some
agenda
support.
for typically Alpha 4 when we're done with the rest, because it's not necessarily a priority as we're going to support both systems, but yeah, we can start investing in the next technology at the end of the cycle.
Engineer loader. I've got you down as to see if we can do it.
Yeah. Sure. 2 minutes left.
Vacation. Go.
No advertising the next session, which is going to be about the app menu. We're going to start with the community outreach plan, and then we'll move to the engineering aspects. Maybe we'll do both actually because we'll have like 2 hours. So
One more comment on the indicators for the XKB layouts.
Yes.
Several XKB layouts are not tied to a specific language, but to a specific country.
Okay.
And some of them are tied to a specific country and a specific language. So you need to look in xkeyboard config, that's the package which delivers them, which layouts are available and how they are defined.
Okay.
Right? For example, I recently added 3 layouts for Taiwan. Yeah? One is a general layout which can be used by all users. One is for indigenous languages, and one is for a specific indigenous language which just has one key mapping, but it's a different keyboard layout, right? So
Just people want to be different.
stuff like this.
Yeah.
It's just to make it easier for them to type the characters they need in the language.
Apparently French screws us all because they have a character nobody uses. the where. The where key.
oh yeah,
Keyboard config.
relax.
Look at xkeyboard config to find out where it's defined. So what should we look for in xkeyboard config?
In the layouts subdirectory, there are all layouts defined, and each layout should have a description in the header. So these are all text files, right? So you just look at the text file, look at the header, what is the description, what is this layout about, right? So either it's a language, or it's a country, or it's a variation of a language, or whatever. Right? Or it's just for convenience. Someone
Are those-
thought it's more convenient to
are those
as a case also.
For computer formatted or human formatted?
Human format.
Human?
You mean XKB data? I don't
That's
see
the binary package. The source package is X keyboard config.
Oh, okay.
And for that, there are a number of bugs open, which I'm going to work on the cycle because the price will be on rotation.
Yeah.
So I will try to fix some of those bugs.
Okay. I'm worried that they're not, since they're not computer parsable. How do we?
The descriptions. They're just like comments.
Yeah. But so do we need to do that? Okay.
The layout itself is passable, of
Okay.
course.
So we're good. Okay.
It's just a description, which is just like a comment in, when you write code, you put it in a comment, it's
Okay.
just the same thing.
Okay. Okay. I see.
Right.
I thought. Okay. I thought we needed to parse those. Good.
Okay, thanks for participation. Thanks, Arnie,
This way,
in
right?
particular for attending and helping us during this session.
No problem.
What would we do without him?
Not having any Chinese users.
Nothing.